So my name is Markus.
Start again. Sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So hi, my name is Markus. I live in London and I work in banking, but I guess somewhat curiously, I've had a relationship with dream and dream work throughout my entire life because of the involvement of my dad, who got into dream work kind of quite some time ago when he was living in Sweden. So my connection with dream work as a result has kind of come in a little bit through the kind of the back door, and as a result, when I then kind of connected it as an adult, it meant that it was quite an interesting thing of almost like having looked at dream work from behind the scenes and then suddenly kind of seeing it kind of go live. So I guess that's kind of the context that I'm talking about dream work here with you tonight.
Well, that's a fascinating context. That's unique. I think you're the only one, maybe one, at least the only one I know of, in that situation. I interviewed someone in Los Angeles last week, and she talked about how dream work affected her marriage and her being a mother with children. So you're giving us a completely different perspective through time. So,
yeah. And it's hilarious because when I was a kid, I was obviously aware of kind of dream groups and stuff like that. And one time, my parents were talking with some friends about some serious adult stuff or whatever, and then they were wondering, did I understand what they were talking about? And they asked me, and I said, well, it was probably a dream group, even though in this particular instance it wasn't. But in terms of how I then kind of got introduced into dream work more as a grown up, that would have been about 15 years ago or so, when there was the Lincoln International Association of Dreams kind of meeting, and at that was something which I did together with my parents, and I have to say, I was a bit uncertain what to expect going to a kind of a dream kind of conference, seminar, or whatever you want to call it. It was actually quite a broad variety of activities, everything from like shamanic dreaming to kind of more formal dream groups to kind of the more academic side of kind of dream research, as well as the kind of the more free-spirited, hugging crystals, running around naked in the woods kind of stuff. I guess for me, kind of dream groups specifically, and specifically the Montague Ullman kind of dream method of all of the dream appreciation methods that I've tried, is the one that really puts the dreamer, front and center of the process. And I think that's the thing that kind of appeals to me. There's no big textbook which says you dreamt about spiders, that means this or whatever. So it's the dreamer centricity of the Ullman method that actually did appeal to me. And but I have explored other methodologies as well.
Would you like to say more? I don't know what to ask you. It's just so fascinating to hear you talk.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if I kind of talk a little bit about the kind of initial experiences of the Ullman process. So the first few times I was frankly too chicken to kind of have my own dream kind of up on display. So I kind of participated from the safety of the group, as opposed to having the kind of spotlight shown on you as the dreamer. And I think the thing that, as I was saying, the having the dreamer front and center, that was something that kind of really impressed me from the very beginning. But also the way that there was a a clear mechanism of safety for the dreamer to make sure that, you know, we didn't stray into areas that that they were kind of uncomfortable with. But beyond that, I mean, I remember being told, oh yeah, you know, you're looking at somewhere between 2 and 4 hours for your average kind of dream group for a single dream. And I remember thinking, you know, how on earth are we going to spend that long talking about a single dream? You know, it's like, in my head, I just had it as, oh yeah, someone tells their dream, we discuss it for a short while, and the thought that we would discuss it for several hours, I just couldn't believe it. And then when we did it, it's like, well, okay, well, that concludes the dream group. And it was like 3.5 hours later. And you're like, where did that time go? And, you know, the old saying, you know, time flies when you're having fun. And I think the dream group method really, you know, it gives the dream enough time to really kind of sink in, and, you know, harnessing the varied points of view and experiences of everyone in the group. And that takes time, and, you know, the larger the group, the more time it takes, frankly. And, you know, you may start with a dream thinking, ah, well, this is clearly what it is, and then as it slowly unfolds like a flower, you know, kind of opening up, all kinds of new facets are revealed. And it's just incredible. A dream that you thought was about one thing suddenly ends up being about something completely different, and actually way more interesting as well. So yeah, that was my kind of initial experience, where, you know, the first few times where I was kind of listening to dream groups, and I haven't actually had a single dream group that I've taken part in where a dream hasn't fully opened. I mean, or at least, you know, a feeling that, yes, we now understand what it's about. So if I then talk about the first time that I was actually willing to kind of put my own dream out there, and you know, it was one of these slightly kind of wacky dreams where, you know, cartoonish things are happening and so forth. And it was a dream with my parents in it, so I figured, oh well, I'm guessing my parents have to be a kind of a big central theme in it. And oh my goodness, something completely different. You know, a dream that I thought it was about my parents ended up being about my job. And the 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 thing that I really that struck me about the dream process, you know, once you've kind of told your dream, and then you get this kind of torrent of ideas, postulations, and basically material getting kind of chucked at you. And the way I've kind of described the kind of the feeling inside of, you know, you have some things that kind of hit a gong, like one of these really big kind of gongs that they would kind of announce, you know, like kind of dinner is served, or the king is arriving, or whatever. And sometimes an idea gets thrown at it and it misses it completely. You get no reaction. It kind of clips it a little bit, and you get this slight kind of ching or whatever. And then something gets thrown at you and it's like it hit bullseye, and you just feel yourself kind of like energy is coursing throughout your entire body. And it's at that moment you realize, okay, that was probably something important that was just said. And then, you know, that's where you kind of make that kind of big realization that it's by kind of getting this kind of torrent of ideas coming at you that that can be so nourishing to the process. You know, working through that kind of dream then you know, kind of gave me a kind of a better understanding really of myself, and, you know, of the things that were kind of bothering me at that time in my life. So it was actually quite a fascinating experience the first time I did it, particularly since that first dream ended up being so totally different from what I thought it was. So if I then kind of talk a little bit about, what my kind of experiences of the kind of the Ullman group in more kind of general terms have been in terms of, why I kind of think it is so powerful. Oh, sorry, my air conditioning just turned on. Let me turn that off. Why I think the Ullman group kind of method is so powerful is that by harnessing all these different kind of points of view, and a good dream group, I think, will have a bit of diversity in it. So not everyone is kind of thinking the same way. It is that it's able to kind of bring to life the dream for the dreamer, and then the dreamer can kind of share it with the group. And by kind of having this kind of backwards and forwards kind of part of the process where the dreamer tells the story, then the dreamer steps back, then the dreamer kind of steps back into the group, all of this is really quite important to get to a point where the dream, which is almost like a kind of a delicate soap bubble, doesn't get polluted by an external influence. And around that is wrapped the safety and the respect for the dreamer as well. But obviously the most kind of fragile thing in the middle is the dream itself, which, if you start kind of, if you were to take the dream process, which is more, let's say, heavy-handed, I feel that it would start to kind of warp the view of what the dream is actually about, as opposed to kind of making sure that you when you're dealing with it particularly in the early parts of the Ullman process, that it's not it's not how should I put it, mangled. So I think the other thing that I've been thinking about in the kind of context of dream work is in the context of my kind of work here in the banking sector in London, because in London, I think there's a lot of as I'm sure in a lot of other kind of workplace settings, there's a lot of people who are quite stressed, and there's it's a high pressure type role and so forth. And I've actually been kind of toying with the idea that it would be advantageous to try dream group settings in a work setting. Now it's something where I haven't actually kind of managed to kind of to do that actually yet, but I think the benefits of the dream group process for people to help understand some of the kind of thoughts in their kind of process. Although I should kind of emphasize that while I do think that dream group work is extremely therapeutic, it's not therapy. I mean, that's something that I think is always important to acknowledge. We live in such a material world that being able to kind of have a method for us to kind of tap into a little bit of our subconscious, I think would be really quite valuable. And that's something that I think is why it's important that dream group work is being promoted around the world. I mean, how do you find it in Taiwan? I mean, has dream group work actually kind of been able to kind of penetrate society at all there, or?
Well, I lead dream groups,
Mm,
and in the community and at the university. And in that sense, especially I would say at the university, because these are how should I say, they're sort of innocent, unsuspecting students that don't like, a lot of them say, gee, I thought this course was about the dreams I had of someday going to America, that kind of dream. And they're surprised that it's about the dreams they have when they're asleep. And so
mm,
they're innocent. And it takes a while, but they sort of are shocked to wake up and see how important it is to their lives and how
mm,
much new information each one of them gets and how terribly relevant uh, what someone else discovers in their dream is to them. And
mm,
so these are students that grow up in a school system, in a family system, in a society that's authoritarian. It tells you what's what,
mm,
and you be quiet and listen. And
mm.
in the dream group, they get a chance to talk, and I find them to be brilliant. I
Yeah.
don't know if I penetrated society, but they're going to go out into society. Now, Shuyen, my wife, Shuyen Wang, she goes around to different institutions around Taiwan and teaches the dream group. She gives dream groups and teaches the leadership training. I've given leadership trainings here to the people who come to my dream groups. I think with her, I think because she does it in Chinese. I'm in English, I
Mm,
don't speak Chinese. And
yeah.
I would guess she would have penetrated society much more than me. Um,
Yeah. And the beautiful thing with dreams is that they're such a universal part of the human condition, isn't it?
exactly.
And you know, you never have any problems kind of finding someone who it's like, well, have you had any freaky dreams? It's like everyone, you know, in my experience at least, will kind of put up their hand. It's like, yeah, I've had some really strange dreams where I don't understand what on earth was kind of going on. And I think it is a everyone recognizes that dreams are real, they exist. And when you're having your water cooler kind of chats with kind of colleagues, although during the pandemic that's not happening at the moment, you just kind of sense this kind of underlying yearning that people have to kind of understand this. But at the same time, I think they're quite afraid of going into a kind of a more, shall we say, kind of therapy process where they kind of just conjure up images of, having to lie on a couch and having a person tell them, how does that make you feel? And not realizing that there are other ways to unlock your dreams, which are much more respectful of you as an individual and a dreamer, but also much more kind of participatory. I think, and I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate, that, processes like the Ullman process just enables you to take part in actually quite an intimate way. And it is a very intimate experience taking part in a dream group, because you're essentially, popping the hood on someone's subconscious, and but doing that in a kind of boundaried and respectful way, not in a like, well, now we're going to kind of expose all of your flaws and how your kind of relationship with your parents was just kind of terrible and so forth, and all of that stuff. No, it's about keeping it very focused to the dream at hand. And I think that's what kind of makes it such a useful, I don't know if I should call it a tool or a process. I guess it's a little bit of both.
Beautifully said. I'm just sitting here in awe listening to you because you are
Mm,
really so expressive. Now, I
mm,
know a lot of people that work with this method and they can't say it like you say it.
mm.
You,
Yeah.
go ahead.
But well, maybe this is where kind of growing up with two psychiatrists as parents, who've been doing dream work as far as I remember, kind of helps kind of frame it a little bit. But sometimes it's also just, being aware of a good thing when you see it, and just, you know sitting back and observing what it is you can achieve with that process. So it's something that I've definitely found to be highly restorative. I mean, it's exhausting work, dream work. I mean, you don't kind of intensely mull over a dream for 2 to 4 hours and kind of think, oh well, now I'm gonna kind of go and read kind of a Leon Trotsky kind of or kind of Sostakovich kind of book or something like that. No, uh, you're you're definitely drained, but by draining, I find that then you find yourself later on feeling quite restored. And I don't think that those were actually either of them authors, but whatever.
It's like exercising in that. It's like going to the gym. You're pretty wiped.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's a workout. But
Yeah,
afterwards, you're much somehow more alive and stronger and connected to what's real.
yeah. And I mean, because I've also kind of had therapy, something which I, by the way, do kind of recommend to anyone who feels like they have issues they want to kind of deal with. And I can definitely feel the similarities, because you're dealing very much with the emotional side of yourself, and it's tiring work as well. After an hour's therapy session, you are usually quite exhausted, and dream work is no different. But at least there you have the group of people to support you, to kind of give you that kind of you know protection, but also kind of harnessing each other's power, and that's really great.
It's true. Everything you say is true about harnessing each other's power. There's really a group intelligence at work in the process.
Yeah, and and I wouldn't say that I've ever had a bad dream group. I've had dream groups where we've gotten lost, and dream groups where you 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 kind of get a few false clues early on, and then you head off in a certain direction. But given enough time and attention, the truth will usually unfold itself, and then all of a sudden you kind of realize, no, wait a minute, no, that wasn't quite right, and you do a course correction, and then you kind of start heading towards the right direction, kind of, and you just have to kind of be willing and ready to just drop kind of the things that you thought you'd learned, but actually it was maybe a bit more groupthink or something like that, as opposed to something that was unfolding itself or presenting itself from the dream itself.
It's exactly, it's true. It's exactly true. I mean, I've had times where right toward the end of the process, suddenly it comes out what the dream is really about.
Mm,
And it's true. That's what you're talking about. It's true. I've seen it.
yeah, and it really is quite amazing, both as a kind of a participant as well as a dreamer. It's an intense process. I mean, as the dreamer, the intensity obviously is amplified, um, and for anyone who's kind of thinking of going into a dream group, it's like, if you've got the kind of the guts to kind of go straight in and be the dreamer, all power to you. uh, but yeah, like I said, I took the kind of the coward's way of kind of listening in on a couple of those first, uh, but even then it was a full-on intense process. So you're definitely not missing out by not having your dream discussed.
No, you're not missing out, because no matter whose dream Mr. Scott is worked with, it's about you,
Mm,
because we're all connected,
yeah,
and that honors
and
it.
yes, and and that the part of the process where you make it your dream for a little while, you really, I take that part of the process, very much to heart when I'm a participant. It's like, trying to kind of think, well, if this happened to me, what are the kind of reactions, thoughts, metaphors, and all that kind of stuff that are kind of coming out. And because I now also appreciate just how powerful that material is to the dreamer, which you don't maybe appreciate until you are the dreamer, is just how energized some of the little tidbits of insight or kind of a perspective that you're being offered, but you are kind of always free to reject, can be. And yeah, I mean, that first bullseye gong moment that I referred to earlier, I mean, that I honestly felt like there was an electric shock kind of going throughout my entire body. I mean, it was really quite profound. And and that statement wasn't even an interpretation. It was an emotional statement. And that emotional statement or statement of emotional frame of mind suddenly just tilted the whole dream, by kind of, a certain number of degrees. And suddenly I was looking at the dream from a different perspective. And yeah, that was very powerful.
Perspective is everything. We have one
Mm.
perspective, and the dream has a very different perspective.
Yeah. And that perspective is something where you just never know what actually kind of will be kind of presented or revealed as you kind of start digging into a dream. And look, and dreams can also have quite many different facets in there. I mean, usually there is a what I would say, I guess, a core, but there will always be things around. You don't dream in a bubble. You don't have one set of experiences and then you dream about just that. Even though they tend to kind of have a kind of a central theme, there will be stuff around, and sometimes that can be a distraction, and sometimes it supports the central theme. But that's part of the fun and joy of that journey of discovery.
It's true. It's really true what you're
Mhm.
saying.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. It's
Yeah.
it's true and it's beautiful. It's you have an appreciation of this. When you came to the Ullman Dream Group Community of Practice in New York City, and everyone in that group, except for you and me, every one of them was psychotherapists of one kind or another. And and when you spoke, I just woke up, and my heart said yes, 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 and I feel the same way now.
Oh yes, and I mean, but that they were really quite fun and intimate kind of sessions that we had over in New York. Psychotherapists. I mean, I have been in groups with kind of, which shall we say, have been psychotherapist heavy, and they can be somewhat, shall we say, influenced by their training. So, but I usually they get there in the end. But yeah, I have definitely kind of seen how I guess you could kind of say that, use the phrase, the cobbler's son doesn't have shoes kind of thing. It applies a little bit to dream work, where if you're so focused on the theory of it all, it might take you a little bit more effort to kind of break out of that. But still, it's always good fun, regardless with who you're working with. But yeah, the most kind of energizing and vibrant groups are the ones that are the most diverse, in my experience.
There's no doubt that's true for groups in general. And I think it must be true in business and government too. They found that the
Absolutely.
groups reach a better decision if they're more diverse.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems with the United States. Some of the groups, are just, they're one kind of people, and they go off in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
It's very true what you say. Your observations are very keen. Let me ask you, because we're approaching the end of our half hour. Let me ask you, do you envision this having any role? I asked Gunnar this question, and I asked it in the wrong way, like a leading question. So I don't want to do that now. Do you want to say anything about whether you feel this process, this Ullman process that we use in small groups, whether it might have any role in the world at large in changing the direction of civilization or education or finance or whatever. Could this be useful, or how?
So absolutely. I mean, so first of all, I think it was at a dream conference in Amsterdam, I heard a Danish lady whose name escapes me now present how she had used the dream process in an educational setting. Now, that wasn't the full Ullman process. It was what I would call the half Ullman, maybe. So you essentially have the kind of the first two steps, but then you leave the second the second half of the process out, mainly from a kind of a safety kind of consideration, to make sure that you're not going too deep with children. And it was impressive, the kind of emotional connectivity that she had achieved with children. I mean, well, as in like teens, and allowing them to express a part of their kind of psyche, which I think is quite hard for young adults and teenagers to access. So I think in an educational setting, absolutely, but it may require a little bit of thinking about how you modulate the process. I mean, I don't think there's any one right answer, but in terms of the world at large, I mean, as I was saying, I've been kind of toying with the idea of trying to kind of set up a bit of a kind of a more, shall we say, banker-centric kind of dream group here in London. And whenever I've kind of spoken to people about it here, they're always really quite enthusiastic, but a little bit scared as well. So I think a key challenge there is kind of making it kind of accessible, and not kind of feel so intimidating. But just based on the experiences I had with dream work, I mean, I think pretty much everyone on the planet, since dreaming is such a universal condition of being a human, would benefit from dream work in some shape or form. Now, whether it's the full Ullman process or some variation thereof, I mean, I think that depends very much on the kind of the context and resources available. But the beauty of it is, it's something that can also be done by total amateurs, as long as they're very conscious of each other's safety. So you need to do it with people you trust. You don't want to kind of jump into a non kind of supervised dream group without having, a great deal of kind of trust with the group that you're kind of working with, unless you kind of have more, everyone has a bit more experience themselves. But yeah, I think it can be useful in so many different kind of ways and in so many different kind of settings that it we need people like you to kind of spread the word.
Well, you've been more expressive than I've ever been, and I think our time is up now. Do you want to say anything more?
I mean, for anyone who might be kind of watching this and is kind of thinking, do I want to kind of give this a try? I would highly recommend. I mean, even if it's a case of gathering just a group of your friends, do it. And I know you're having dreams, so there's no excuse for why not to try it.
Markus, thank you so much for this interview. And if you come up with anything else you want to say in the future, just email me and we could do another one too, a different one. So I'm gonna end it here. And
okay,
thank you very, very, very much.
It's been a pleasure.